Ah, good morning, my good sir.
You're standing in line at a coffee shop in a city you don't live in. The barista calls out a name. You look up, and there, collecting an oat milk latte, is someone you went to high school with. Someone you haven't even thought about in 8 years. Someone you never even liked.
Roger, Charlie, we're ready to rock.
Your brain does a little stutter step. What are the odds? You text your group chat, "You won't believe who I just ran into." 3 people reply with a mind blown emoji. One friend says, "The universe is wild." Another says, "Everything happens for a reason." But here's the thing, it does not, or at least not in the way you think. Because what you just experienced wasn't a cosmic wink. It wasn't fate leaning in with a knowing smile. It was something, and far more common than you'd ever guess. It was mathematics, wearing a mask.
What the hell are you talking about?
Like, comment, and subscribe.
Unusual practice. Rethink what you think you know.
We've all had that moment, the one where the universe seems to be speaking directly to us. You dream about someone and they call the next day. You keep seeing the same number, 1111, 444, 777, plastered across clocks, receipts, license plates. You think of a song and it plays on the radio 30 seconds later. It feels impossible. And because it feels impossible, we reach for explanations that sit outside logic. Synchronicity, angels, manifestation, the simulation glitching. Carl Jung called it meaningful coincidence. New Age influencers call it alignment. And Reddit calls it a glitch in the matrix. But here's the uncomfortable truth that no one really wants to hear. The universe isn't winking at you, it's simply blinking. And the difference between those two things is where things really get interesting. So let's talk about Littlewood's Law of Miracles. John Edensor Littlewood was a British mathematician who spent his life thinking about probability. And in 1989, he proposed something brilliantly mundane, that each of us should expect to experience a miracle, a 1 in a million event, roughly once every 35 days. Here's his logic. Assume you're awake and alert about 8 hours a day. In that time, you see or hear roughly one thing per second. That's around 30,000 events per day. Over the course of a month, that's about 1 million events, which means statistically, a 1 in a million thing should happen to you once a month. Let me repeat that. That 1 in a million thing should happen to you once a month.
Ta-da!
Now, most of these miracles fly under the radar. You don't notice the car that almost hit you because you left 10 seconds earlier. You don't register the person who almost became your soulmate because he got on a different train. But every so often, one of these events is visible. And when it is, your brain lights up like a pinball machine. Humans are pattern recognition machines. It's what kept us alive when rustling grass could mean a predator. But that same mechanism misfires constantly in the modern world. We notice the coincidences, but we forget the non-coincidences. You think of your friend and they don't text, you forget. You think of your friend and they do text, oh boy, do you remember. You've essentially run a lottery where you only count the wins. Psychologists call this confirmation bias, but the phrase doesn't quite capture the existential desperation of it. What we're really doing is trying to make randomness feel less random, because randomness is terrifying. It suggests we live in a universe that doesn't care, doesn't see us, and doesn't intervene. And that's a hard pill to swallow when you've been raised on Disney movies and self-help books that tell you the universe is always listening. Let's talk about these angel numbers, or more specifically, why you keep seeing 1111. So, If you check your phone even 10 times a day, you've got a decent shot at seeing a repeating number. There are 1,440 minutes in a day and only 24 repeating time patterns, 01, 01, 02, etc. That's a 1.6% chance per glance. Do that over a course of a week, and you're going to see 1111, 333, 1212. It's not synchronicity. It's statistics in a hoodie.
Really?
But now here's where it gets weird. Once you notice it, you start noticing it even more. It's called the frequency illusion, or the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon. Your brain, now primed to look for 1111, spots it just about everywhere. And every time it does, it reinforces the feeling that something bigger is at play. You're not discovering meaning. You're actually manufacturing it. And honestly, that's kind of beautiful in a tragic, self-deceptive, very human way. But here's the part that no one actually talks about. Even when you know the math, even when you understand Littlewood's law and confirmation bias and frequency illusions, it still feels like something. Because meaning isn't just cognitive. It's emotional. It's the way your chest tightens when you see that old friend, the way your skin prickles when the song plays, the way you feel seen, even if no one's looking. The mathematician can explain the odds, but they can't explain why those odds matter to you. In his book, The Drunkard's Walk, physicist Leonard Lendenow writes,
"The human mind is built to identify patterns, but it is not built to understand randomness.
We are meaning-making creatures trapped in a probabilistic universe, and that tension between what we want to believe and what we can prove is where coincidence lives. But if coincidences are just math in disguise, why do some of them feel so heavy? Why do certain ones haunt us for years while others fade in seconds? Here's a fun fact. Your brain is lying to you constantly, not maliciously. It's just doing what it was designed to do, which is to say, find patterns even when there aren't any. This is called apophenia, and it's the reason you see a face in your morning toast, a rabbit in the clouds, and the Virgin Mary in a water stain on an underpass in Chicago. It's also why coincidences feel like messages. Apophenia is an evolutionary gift. 10,000 years ago, if you saw a pattern in the grass, let's say the outline of a predator, guess what? You lived. If you didn't, well, you became lunch. So the brain evolved to this hypervigilance. Better to see 100 false patterns than miss the one real threat. The problem is, we're no longer running from leopards. We're scrolling Instagram at 2 a.m. looking for signs that our ex still thinks about us. We're analyzing Spotify playlists for hidden meanings. We're Googling, what does it mean when you see a crow 3 times in one day? The brain doesn't know the difference between a rustle in the grass and a recurring number. It just knows pattern equals meaning. And once it locks into a pattern, it kind of feeds your dopamine. The little chemical reward that says, yes, this matters, now keep looking. Enter Carl Jung, the psychoanalyst who looked at coincidence and said, what if it's not random? Jung believed in something he called synchronicity, the idea that certain coincidences are meaningful, not because of cause and effect, but because of a deeper, casual connection between the psyche and the cosmos. He thought the universe and the human mind were somehow linked, like 2 instruments tuned to the same frequency. His most famous example was a patient of his was describing a dream about a golden scarab beetle. At the exact moment, a real scarab beetle, a rare insect in Switzerland, tapped on Jung's window. He opened it, caught the beetle, and handed it to her. Needless to say, she had a breakthrough in therapy. Jung said this wasn't coincidence. It was synchronicity, a cosmic alignment. Freud, his mentor and intellectual sparring partner, thought this was complete nonsense. Freud believed the psyche was a closed system, a theater where all the actors are inner drives, repressed memories, and neurosis. There is no cosmic connection. There's just your brain projecting meaning into a chaotic world because it can't tolerate chaos.
Oh, shit!
In Letters Between the Two, Freud essentially told Jung, "You're seeing gods because you're afraid of the void." But Jung shot back and said, "You're denying gods because you're afraid of awe."
Aw, so cute.
It's one of the great unresolved debates in psychology, and honestly, both of them might be right. When something unexpected happens, especially something emotionally charged, your brain releases dopamine. Dopamine is the neurochemical of salience. It doesn't just make you feel good, it makes things matter. It tells your brain, remember this. So, when you bump into your high school friend in a random city, your brain doesn't file that under statistically unremarkable event. It files it under this means something. And every time you recall it, the dopamine fires again. The memory gets stronger and the sense of meaning deepens. You're not discovering significance. You're actually reinforcing it.
Yay!
Neuroscientist Robert Sapolsky puts it bluntly.
We're dopamine junkies. Our brains are wired to find meaning because meaning feels good. The pattern doesn't have to be real. It just has to feel real.
And this is where things get slippery, because if the brain is generating meaning, basically chemically fabricating it, then what does it mean to say something is meaningful? Is meaning something you find, or is it something you make? Now here's the real question, the one that apparently kept both Jung and Freud up at night. Is the psyche a mirror or a window? Does it reflect only itself, your fears, desires, biases, and dopamine loops, or does it occasionally open onto something else? Some larger pattern, some connective tissue between mind and world. Freud said mirror. Jung said window. And science, for the most part, sides with Freud. Coincidences are the brain seeing its own reflection and mistaking it for a sign. But here's the uncomfortable truth that no one really wants to admit. We can't actually prove that. Because meaning, by its nature, is subjective. You can't measure it in a lab. You can't peer review a feeling. And if synchronicity exists in the experience of connection, not in the mechanics of it, then science might not be the right tool. The poet Rainer Maria Rilke once wrote,
"Perhaps all the dragons in our lives are princesses who are only waiting to see us act, just once, with beauty and courage."
Maybe coincidences are like that. Not literal, not logical, but still somehow true. And if the brain's pattern obsession is just evolution misfiring, then why do physicists, people who study the actual structure of reality, keep stumbling into the same weird territory?
Feeling disconnected from yourself and society's fast pace? Unusual Practice podcast dives into neuroscience, quantum mysteries, untold cultural truths, and hidden societal patterns. Charlie guides you to think deeper, connect stronger, and heal fractured paths in life. It is time to uncover the extraordinary within and release the programming. Tune in on your favorite platform now. Expand your mind with Unusual Practice today.
Okay, so let's take a deep breath. We're about to dip into quantum mechanics, and I promise to keep it as painless as possible. But here's the thing. Quantum physics is deeply, unsettlingly weird. And it's weird in ways that feel tailor-made for people who believe in synchronicity, manifestation, and cosmic alignment. Which is why every self-help guru with a vision board has co-opted it. And why actual physicists spend half their time debunking mystical interpretations of their own field. But here's what makes this tricky. Quantum mechanics doesn't make intuitive sense, even to the people who understand the math. So when someone says the universe is conscious or your thoughts create reality, it's not entirely baseless, it's just highly misunderstood. So let's start with quantum entanglement that is posted all over social media. When two particles become entangled, they remain connected in such a way that the state of one instantly affects the state of the other. no matter how far apart they are. Measure one particle's spin, and the other particle's spin is determined instantaneously, even if it's on the other side of the universe. And Einstein hated this damn thing. He called it spooky action at a distance, and he thought it proved quantum mechanics was incomplete. There had to be some hidden mechanism, some signal passing between the particles. But decades of experiments have confirmed there is no signal. The connection is real, and it's faster than light, which according to relativity shouldn't be possible. So, naturally, people latched on to this and said, see, the universe is connected. We're all entangled. That's why I thought of you and you texted me. And physicists collectively groaned. Physicist Brian Cox has said this more times than he probably cares to count.
Quantum mechanics does not say your thoughts influence reality in any meaningful way.
Yes, in quantum mechanics, observation collapses a wave function, but observation doesn't mean human consciousness. It means measurement. Any interaction with another particle or system. A photon hitting a detector counts. A rock rolling downhill counts. Your brain having a thought about abundance does not count. The universe is not reading your vision board. And yet, quantum mechanics does show that reality is not deterministic. At the smallest scales, particles don't have fixed properties until they're measured. They exist in a cloud of probabilities. The universe is, in some fundamental sense, uncertain. Physicist Werner Heisenberg, one of the founders of quantum theory, wrote,
"What we observe is not nature itself, but nature exposed to our method of questioning."
That's not mysticism, but it's also not mysticism. It's a crack in the foundation of the clockwork universe, a hint that reality is less structured, less predictable, less known than classical physics promised. In classical physics, randomness doesn't really exist. If you knew the position and velocity of every particle in the universe, you could predict the future perfectly. The universe was a machine. Coincidences were just ignorance, things that seemed random because we didn't have all the information. But quantum mechanics broke that. Randomness, it turns out, is baked into the fabric of reality. Not because we lack information, but because there is no information to lack. The universe is probabilistic at its core. So, when you experience a coincidence, you're not just witnessing a quirk of statistics. You're witnessing the fundamental unpredictability of existence, which, depending on your disposition, is either deeply comforting or utterly terrifying. Maybe coincidences are the universe reminding us of that, not because it's sending messages, guys, but because it's incapable of being fully known. And if that's true, if reality itself is uncertain, then maybe the question isn't, do coincidences mean something? Maybe the question is, what does it mean to ask for meaning in a universe that refuses to be pinned down? So, if the math says coincidences are inevitable and the brain says they're meaningful and physics says reality is unknowable, where the hell does that leave us?
Ciao, ciao.
Now let's talk about the coincidences that change everything. Not the amusing ones, not the weird moments you share over drinks. The big ones. I'm talking about the ones that redirect your entire life. For example, you miss your flight and that plane crashes. You take a wrong turn and meet the person you'll marry. You pick up a random book at a yard sale and it contains the exact answer you've been searching for. These aren't just pattern recognition glitches. These feel like absolute interventions, like something fate, God and the universe, your future self reached back through time and nudged you onto a different path. The uncomfortable part is you can't prove it didn't. In 2001, a woman named Evelyn Adams won the New Jersey lottery twice. The odds? 1 in 17 trillion. Twice, y'all. Twice, for the love of God. But now here's a less famous story. In 1950, a church choir in Beatrice, Nebraska was supposed to meet for practice at 7:20 p.m. All 15 members were late, one had car trouble, another was finishing homework, and another was ironing a dress. At 7:25 p.m., the church exploded. A gas leak had turned the building into a bomb. If even one person had been on time, they'd be dead. Instead, all 15 survived because of a statistically bizarre convergence of minor delays. Afterward, every single member of the choir believed it was divine intervention. And who's to say they're wrong? The math says improbable things happen. Evolution says our brains see patterns. But the lived experience says something protected us. And lived experience, as it turns out, is a powerful form of evidence, not scientifically, but existentially. Some psychologists believe that what we call coincidence might actually be intuition in disguise, that our subconscious is processing far more information than we realize, microexpressions, environmental cues, probabilities we can't articulate, and surfacing it as a hunch or a feeling. So when you get a sudden urge to take a different route home and later find out there was a massive accident on your usual path, maybe that wasn't the universe intervening. Maybe your brain detected something, traffic patterns, news reports half heard on the radio, a subconscious calculation, and it kind of steered you away. Psychologists call this idea the intelligence of the unconscious. The idea that intuition isn't mystical, it's informational. It's your brain doing advanced predictive modeling without telling you. But here's the catch. Even if that's true, it still feels like magic because you didn't consciously decide to turn left. You just did. And later, when you learned what you avoided, the feeling isn't my subconscious is well calibrated. The feeling is something was looking out for me. And maybe that distinction doesn't matter. Because whether the guidance comes from inside your brain or outside the universe, the result is the same. You feel less alone, less adrift, less at the mercy of pure randomness. Humans are terrible at accepting that no one is in control. We need agency. We need someone, something to be behind the curtain, pulling strings, orchestrating outcomes. It's why we anthropomorphize everything. Our pets, our cars, the weather. It's why we say the universe has a plan instead of, I got lucky. Psychologists call this agency attribution, the tendency to assign intentionality to events even when there's no evidence of it. You get fired and 6 months later you land your dream job. You don't think the job market shifted. You think, I needed to get fired to end up here. You meet someone at a party you almost didn't attend. You don't think, statistically, I meet new people at parties. You actually think, I was meant to be there. And here's the thing. That narrative might be the miracle, not the event itself, not some cosmic puppeteer, but your ability to transform randomness into meaning, to take the raw material of probability and sculpt it into a story that makes you feel connected, purposeful, and held. Philosopher Albert Camus once said,
"What we observe is not nature itself, but nature exposed to our method of questioning."
Dark, but also kind of liberating. Because if meaning isn't found, but created, then coincidences don't need to be proof of anything. They just need to be useful. They need to move you. The question isn't, was that the universe speaking? The question is, did it help? Because if believing you weren't meant to miss that flight gives you a sense of purpose, if it makes you more grateful, more present, more willing to trust the unfolding, then does it really matter whether it was fate or chance? Writer Cheryl Strayed, in her book Tiny Beautiful Things, writes,
"The universe doesn't conspire to bring you what you want, but your belief that it does can conspire to bring you peace."
Maybe that's the real function of coincidence, not to deliver messages, but to invite interpretation, to give us a moment where the veil feels thin, where randomness looks like intention, and where we get to decide what it means. And in that act of deciding, we become authors of our own experience. So maybe the universe doesn't care. Maybe it's not watching, but maybe that's not the point. Maybe the magic is that we care, that we watch, that we turn accidents into stories and stories into reasons to keep on going. All right, so here's what we do know. Coincidences are mathematically inevitable. Your brain is wired to find patterns even where none exist. Quantum mechanics says reality is probabilistic, and your need for meaning is so strong that you'll find it in toast and license plates, in the way a song comes on the radio at just the right time. But here's what we also know. You notice when reality speaks back. Not because the universe is talking, but because you are listening. And in that act of listening, of paying attention, of being awake to the strange and the surprising, you transform randomness into a story. And story is how humans navigate chaos. It's how we make sense of a world that refuses to make sense on its own.
Like, comment, and subscribe.
The Stoics had a concept called amor fati, love of fate. Not because fate is good, but because meaning comes from how you meet it. Marcus Aurelius wrote,
"The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it."
Maybe coincidences are like that. Not proof of anything, not signs of synchronicities or cosmic winks, just the raw material of existence. Probability, timing, attention, and what you choose to do with it. Maybe the universe does not send signs. Maybe it just reflects the frequency of your attention.
Like and subscribe.
And if you're paying attention, if you're awake, if you're noticing, if you're letting randomness astonish you, that every moment, every encounter, every near miss and unlikely convergence becomes a kind of miracle. Not because it was meant to be, but because you were there to see it. The universe doesn't owe you meaning, but it offers you countless chances to make some. And maybe that's the only coincidence that matters.
Thank you so much.
That was Unusual Practice. I'm Charlie, just another human Googling the meaning of life. Until next time, be kind, be strange, be curious, and don't forget to forward this episode, like, share, and comment. I love hearing your opinions, so please keep the conversation alive. See you again next week.
Mom, somebody just followed me.